Did you ever want to quit? Just give up. Have you ever seen cutting your losses and checking out as the only option that you had to deal with the problem? Have you ever wanted to just give up? You see, it's really easy to be up and on a high and everything when things are good and everything is going great for you. But boy, can things turn around in a hurry, can't they? And then the question becomes, how can you be up when you are down? When the troubles of life have kicked you to the curb and all you want to do is quit? How can you stay upbeat and positive in those situations? I mean, I can get real motivated and excited when people are treating me right, when people tell me what a great job my sermons are and the Bible classes and so forth and all. And it's really great. People send little notes of encouragement and all. What a high. And I'm sure you're the same way in your job. When people are complimenting you, when the boss notices your hard work, or when you are the boss and the people who work underneath you compliment the management style that you display and so forth. It just does us good to have those highs. And we all have had the high points. But then something happens. You get passed over for a promotion at work. Your friends start to take you for granted. Problems and obstacles show up. And all of a sudden, we find ourselves right smack dab in the middle of a pity party for ourselves. And because it's my party, I'll cry if I want to, right? Exactly, yeah. We tell others that somebody did us wrong somehow, some way. And if they don't start feeling sorry for us, then we're going to tell them all about everything that they did. And if they're still not feeling sorry for us, we're going to make a few things up, aren't we? Just so that they will, until they start to feel sorry for us. But finally, and our attitude is lower than a snake's belly. Finally, we've convinced ourselves, if no one else, that our only alternative is to give up and quit. Did you know that there was a preacher in the Bible who went through that same process? He wanted to quit. He wanted to give up. He wanted to throw it all, throw in the towel. His name was Jeremiah. And in Jeremiah chapter 20, verses 7 through 9, Jeremiah chapter 9, verses 1 and 2, Jeremiah writes, "Oh, that my head were a spring of water, and my eyes a fountain of tears. I would weep day and night for the slain of my people. Oh, that I had in the desert a lodging place for travelers, so that I might leave my people and go away from them, for they are adulterers, a crowd of unfaithful people." Not a real positive outlook, was it? Not a very upbeat guy, not a very high point in Jeremiah's life. He'd lost sight of his goal. But you turn a few chapters later, over to Jeremiah chapter 20, verses 7 through 9. And Jeremiah says, "O Lord, you deceived me, and I was deceived. You overpowered me and prevailed. I am ridiculed all day long. Everyone mocks me. Whenever I speak, I cry out, proclaiming violence and destruction. So the word of the Lord has brought me insult and reproach all day long. But if I say I will not mention him or speak any more in his name, his word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot." Jeremiah had some pretty bad names for the people he preached to. They were a worthless, useless, immoral bunch of wretches. He figured that there was no point in continuing to preach to them because they weren't listening anyway. I feel him, I really do. Not here, okay, not here. Not with y'all. But you think about it. I mean, if you're up there and you're pouring your heart and you're sold out and people are just sitting there, okay, whatever. It's going to get on your nerves. And it got on Jeremiah's nerves. He even accused God of lying to him and deceiving him. In fact, he wanted to give up the whole preaching business, go out into the desert, open up a hotel for travelers. That's what he was wanting to do. But he found out that he couldn't. There was a compulsion in him. And he called it a fire in my bones. And that compulsion rallied him. And a great man and a great ministry was saved because a man learned how to be up when he was down. You know, life is full of ups and downs. But I'm sure I didn't have to tell you that. If you think about it, there's the motion of the sea. Up and down, up and down. The temperature has highs and lows. Very few climates are steady year-round. Seasons change. That's one of the great things about Northwest Arkansas. Generally speaking, there are 4 distinct seasons. You know, I mean, we haven't really had winter yet, but that's beside the point. But generally, there's 4. They change. Music would be monotonous were it not for the ups and downs of the music scale. I mean, I could compose a great symphony. Middle C, ding, 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 ding. That's all there would be if there weren't the ups and downs of the music scale. Even the stock market would lose its customer appeal. I mean, think about it. Some broker comes up and says, hey, if you will invest $100 with me today, in 20 years, I'm going to give you $100 back. How many would take that deal? No one wants that. They want that money to grow, don't they? Yeah. Blood pressure has a diastolic and systolic. Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't play a doctor on TV. And I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But I do know that if those 2 numbers are ever the same, you're going to pass out. Because that's just the way that it works. Whether high or low, it's all a flat desert if it all stays the same. So what about the ups and downs? What do we do about them? How do we handle the downs? How do we handle the bumps in the road road of life? How can we prepare for the downs in life? Well, first of all, I think we need to understand 5 things about the downs that we experience in life, those low points. 5 things we need to understand about them. First of all, downs are normal. Downs are normal. They really are normal. Like this is a down right now. Okay. They are normal. They come to everyone in every circumstance. The Bible talks about encountering problems and obstacles and so forth. And it says in so many words, such things must come. It also admonishes us. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, Paul says, no temptation has seized you except what is common to man. Those downs are common to man. You are not unique in this regard. You're unique in other areas. Don't misunderstand me. But as far as experiencing downs, you're not unique. Everybody has them. Downs are the normal. We live in a negative world that is filled with problems. Downs happen. Yet it is not the downs, but our response and reaction to them that makes all the difference in the world. So the first thing about downs is that downs are normal. Second thing about downs is that downs are not the whole story. Excuse me. Downs are not the whole story. No one has all downs. Yet to hear some people talk, that's all that they do have. It's kind of like the man or woman who was a great athlete in high school, but then in their senior year they blew out their knee and their athletic career was over and their life plateaued in high school, and it's just been one downhill slide ever since. And they talk about when they're 50 and 60 years old, the glory days of when they were 18 years old. And you'd think that life had been a complete failure for them. Now, it's been said that we all have two lists: reasons to be happy and reasons to be sad. And that everyone in the world has these two lists. Okay? And that when somebody comes up and asks you that oh so innocent question, how are you doing? You simply and subconsciously choose which of those two lists you're going to emphasize in your life. So they say, how are you doing? And you say, hey, I feel great. Or they say, how are you doing? And you say, well, I feel like the steamroller of life has flattened my face. You know, whichever list that you're going to tell them about. But the truth is, both lists are there. Downs are not the whole story. And third thing we need to know about downs. Excuse me. Downs are not permanent. Downs are not permanent. They don't last forever. Consider Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. If we don't give up doing good, if we keep on doing good, even though things around us are not that great, even though we're going through a down time, if we keep on doing good, we will reap a harvest of good if we don't give up. 2 verses before this one, Paul talks about or reminds us that we reap what we sow. This promotes what has been called the 4 laws of sowing and reaping. Now, mind you, I said laws. Okay, these aren't theories, probabilities, ideas, possibilities. In every case of sowing and reaping, I'm certain you'll find these 4 things hold true. Number 1, you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. That makes sense, doesn't it? Number 2, you reap more than you sow. Okay, you plant 5 tomato plants and you get a lot more than 5 tomatoes off of them. You reap more than you sow. Number 3, you reap later than you sow. How many of you have ever planted a garden and the next day enjoyed the harvest? It doesn't work that way, does it? And then finally, in the meantime, you have to pull the weeds. You have to pull weeds, or the weeds will overtake your garden. Even when it seems that bad is all you're getting, hang in there. If you have sown some good seeds, they'll eventually come to the top. Downs are not permanent. 4th, downs mark the contrast. Downs make the contrast. You couldn't see white except for black, and you can't see black except for white. Diamonds are best shown against black velvet. I never really understood that. Why anytime you went into a jewelry store, they would show their jewelry putting it on a black velvet cloth. But I have a friend who is a jeweler, and he explained it to me one time. He said, because the black makes such a contrast with the shininess of the jewel that you're showing. And that's why they do that. It makes it look better. Contrast. You can best appreciate the good times if you hang in there during the bad times. You know, a honeymoon every day for the rest of your life would be unreal and finally unfulfilling. I have said many a time when I was playing golf, and I think Lynn can attest to this, I hit the ball and it goes, well, wherever it goes. And I just say, hey, perfection would be boring, but I sure would like to try it once. But perfection would be boring. All good, we would eventually not truly appreciate it. In fact, good could not exist without the bad. If it weren't for the downs, we wouldn't know what up was. Even in fairy tales, happily ever after wouldn't be so happy if they hadn't had to go through some pretty tough times to get there to defeat the bad. There are challenges to tackle, problems to solve, goals to accomplish. It's been said that the harder the struggle, the sweeter the reward. I believe that that's true. If it weren't for the downs, we truly wouldn't know just how blessed we really are. Then finally, downs are not the outcome. Downs are not the outcome. Many times in my athletic career and in my volunteer coaching career. My team was down at halftime. We were losing at halftime, but we came back to win the game. Now, how do we do that? I mean, if we were losing at halftime, how do we come back and win in the second half? Well, because the game's not one half, it's two halves. Because halftime isn't full time. The game isn't over until it's over. Pretty simple, pretty cliche, but very true. Even the last play of the game can win the game. As long as there's time on the clock, then the game is not over. Did you realize that Babe Ruth struck out 1,330 times in his career? He struck out 1,330 times. But you know what? Most people don't remember that. Most people remember that Babe Ruth hit 714 career home runs. They might say, well, why are you talking about Babe Ruth and everything? He doesn't hold the record anymore. Well, because for some of our modern players, most thing that they remember about that is steroids, okay? So we go back to Babe Ruth and all, because he's a good example of this. We don't remember the bad things, the strikeouts. We remember the home runs. So what do we do about the downs? How do we handle them when they happen to us? I mean, we realize these 5 things, but where do we go from there? What do we do about downs? Well, number one, 3 ideas, first of all. First, number 1, accept them. Just as we accept other things that we don't have any control over. Day and night, the time of the day of the week, the month and the year. How many of you can control what month it is? How many of you can control what day it is, what hour it is in that day? We can't control those things. It's simply that time, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we accept downs as just part of life. That sounds pretty depressing, doesn't it? Except for the fact that there is nothing fatal about downs. There is nothing at all fatal about downs unless we surrender to them. And if we surrender to them, then they will defeat us. Accept the fact that life is not going to be a bed of roses. And realize that even if it was a bed of roses, those roses have thorns. Several years back, when Monica was selling Mary Kay as a way of earning money, she was recruiting people to sell with her. And she recruited this one girl that was going to church with us. And she was really excited about it. Everything was good, the lady was. And so she got her little kit thing, and then she went to the phones one night and spent about 5 minutes making telephone calls, and then called Monica and said she was done. She was going to quit. She had called 3 people, and all of them had said no. Now, I realize in baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. It doesn't work that way in sales, does it? You know, you don't give up after that. Now, granted, it's good if you have some ups and, you have some people that say yes right away and everything, but you can't give up after just a couple of being turned down a couple of times. Nothing worthwhile comes easy, so we need to accept the fact that we will have some downs and decide that these downs are not going to define us, and they sure aren't going to defeat us. Accept downs. Number 2, understand them. Downs have never stopped anyone from success. Never. Whether we're talking about somebody in the athletic world, or in their career, or in their marriage, or even in church. Downs have never stopped anyone from success. Let me give you an example of this. If I were to ask all of the couples, I'm not asking, okay, but if I were to ask all of the couples who have been married for 50 or more years to stand up, and I were to ask them a question, so have there been any problems in your marriage? I'd probably get about the same result I got with you sitting down, is a smiling like, yeah, right, whatever. Of course there have been problems. Of course there's been times when things haven't gone right. But that didn't stop a great marriage from succeeding. If I were to ask those of you who are retired, if in your business career, if there were any setbacks, you'd probably laugh at that too and say, well, of course there were setbacks. Of course there were rough patches in the road and problems. But it is infinitely more important what you do about your problems and setbacks rather than the fact that you have problems and setbacks. Let me share with you a biography of a failure. Okay, and you probably have heard this before. Let me just share it with you. This man had less than 3 years of formal education. He failed in business in 31. He was defeated for the legislature in 32. Again, he failed in business in 33. He was elected to the legislature in 34. In 38, he was defeated for Speaker of the legislature. He was defeated for elector in 40, defeated for Congress in 43, elected to Congress in 46, and defeated in 48. Defeated for the Senate in 55. Defeated for the vice presidential nomination in 56. Defeated for the Senate in 58. From 31 to 58, 27 years. In those 27 years, most of them spent in politics, he had exactly 2 successes. Now, if you're in politics and you win 2 elections, that's not a good thing, okay? Especially over 27 years. But strangely enough, 2 years after his final defeat for the Senate, in 60, he was elected President of the United States. This, of course, is the story of Abraham Lincoln's life. Problems won't stop any good thing from happening. If you take time and make the effort to understand them and work your way through them. So understand the downs when they come. Figure out why they come and see what you can do from there. And then finally, choose to be up. Choose to be up. Remember, you've got 2 lists. Which one are you going to emphasize? The common question, how do you feel, is more accurately asked, how do you choose to feel? Life is what you choose it to be. Life is what you choose it to be. Your world is what you choose it to be. You know, some people gripe about conditions of the world in the world. They blame them for the failures. They blame everything around them for how horrible and bad their life is. But isn't it peculiar? Many people live in the same world. They cope with the same problems, and yet they come out on top. You look at that and you think, well, choice has to have something to do with it. You can choose to be up. You can choose to be positive. Choice has everything to do with how things turn out. For example, there's a little poem. It says, 2 frogs fell in a can of cream, or so I've heard it told. The sides of the can were shiny and steep. This cream was deep and cold. Oh, what's the use, croaked number 1? 'Tis fate, no helps around. Goodbye, my friend, goodbye, cruel world. And weeping still, he drowned. But number 2 of sterner stuff, dog paddled in surprise, the while he wiped his creamy face and dried his creamy eyes. I'll swim a while at least, he said, or so I've heard he said. It really wouldn't help the world if one more frog were dead. An hour or 2 he kicked and swam, not once he stopped to mutter, but kicked and swam and kicked, then hopped out via butter. Attitude, choice. Dale Carnegie once said, to have a feeling you must grab the feeling. Choose, therefore, happiness. Grab onto happiness. Choose health. Grab onto it. Choose success. Grab onto it. And more importantly, choose eternal life. Affirm what you really want to be. When downs start to seem like they are all you have, remember that second frog. And better still, I want you to remember these three things. Remember, first of all, whoa, that was weird. Remember these three things. Number one, I am made in God's image. I am made in God's image, and guess what? God don't make junk, okay? I am made in God's image. Number two, remember, I can choose my attitude. God gave us freedom of choice. We can choose to emphasize the bad things in our life, or we can choose to emphasize the good things in our lives. It's a conscious decision that we have to make each and every day. Remember, I am made in God's image. Remember, I can choose my attitude. And remember, I choose to feel great. I choose to feel great. Use that power of choice to choose to emphasize the positive things in your life. What's positive in your life? You have so many problems, you say. Your health isn't what it once was. Your bank account isn't what you want it to be. And there's so many other issues going on in your life and so many other bad things happening. Well, choose to remember you were made in God's image. You have the power to choose what you're going to emphasize in your life. Choose to focus and dwell on the positive, and your life will be a lot better. It really will. Even when you go through the down times, even when you go through the bad times, even when it seems like your world is caving around on top of you. God has a plan, God has a purpose for your life. And all we've got to do is look to Him, and He'll show us what it is. Tonight, if you haven't been looking for the positives, if you haven't been seeking and trying to turn that cream into butter, as the second frog did, if you've given up, the good news is God hasn't given up on you. Don't give up on God. Let Him help you. Let us help you. If you're subject to the invitation of Jesus and you need to make a public response, don't leave here without making that response. If you need to make a private response, then respond privately. Or maybe you need to talk to somebody. Talk to one of our shepherds. They'll talk with you about it. They'll pray with you in private about whatever it is that you need. But don't go home not having things right between you and God. If we can help you in some way to make them right, won't you come to the front now as we stand and sing?